Hello, my name is Claire Farwell, and today my presentation will be on Rosa Luxemburg. Rosa Luxemburg was born as Rosalie Luxemburg, and some other documents show her name as Rosa Luxemburg. These different spellings are because of the Anglicization of names, in which names are changed to spellings closer to English sounds. From now on, I will pronounce her name as Rosa Luxemburg. Rosa was born on March 5, 1871 in Zamość, a historical city in southeastern Poland, which was in the Russian sector of Poland. She was the fifth and youngest child in her family, and her father was Elias Luxemburg, and he was a timber trader. Her mother was Lene Lauenstein. Her father delivered weapons to Polish partisans and organized fundraisers for the January Uprising, which was an insurrection aimed at the restoration of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Luxemburg later states that her father imparted an interest in liberal ideas in her early on. The entire family moved to Warsaw in 1873, and both Polish and German were spoken at home. Later, Rosa learned Russian as well. She eventually became fluent in Russian and French, but Polish remained her first language. Now, I will discuss Rosa's education. In 1884, at the age of 13, she enrolled at an all-girls secondary school in Warsaw, which she attended until 1887. The second women's gymnasium was a school that rarely accepted Polish applicants, and acceptance of Jewish children was even more rare. At school, the children were only allowed to speak Russian, although she secretly attended secret meetings where students would study the works of Polish poets and writers. This was forbidden at school because of the Russification against Poles, which was an intense process when the Russian state aimed to denationalize Poles. In 1886, Rosa joined the illegal Polish left-wing Proletariat Party. While she was a part of the group, she organized a general strike, in which a substantial proportion of the total labor force in a city participates. This strike resulted in 4 of the party's leaders being put to death, and the party was disbanded, although the remaining members continued to meet in private. Because of her activity in the Proletariat Party, Rosa was wanted by the Tsarist police. She then hid in the countryside, working as a private tutor at a noble Polish house. In order to escape detention, she fled to Switzerland, where she attended the University of Zurich. At university, she studied philosophy, history, politics, economics, and mathematics. She specialized in political science and economical crises. Rosa was one of the first women in the world with a doctorate in economics, which she received after presenting her doctoral dissertation of the industrial development of Poland. This is one reason why feminists throughout the years have looked up to her as a leader. After getting her degree, Rosa began to study the politics of international Marxism. The definition of Marxism is the theory of Karl Marx, which says that a society's classes are the cause of struggle, and that society should have no classes. With the help of 2 others, Leo Jogiches and Julian Marchwalski, Luxemburg published the newspaper Sprawa Robotnicza, meaning the workers' cause. The paper opposed the nationalist policies of the Polish Socialist Party. Rosa believed that in order to have an independent Poland, social revolutions must first occur in Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Russia. She also believed that the struggle should be against capitalism, not just for Polish independence. Rosa and Leo Jogiches co-founded the Social Democracy of the Kingdom of Poland and Lithuania Party after merging Congress's Poland's and Lithuanian social democratic organizations. Despite living in Germany for most of her adult life, Luxemburg was the main leader of the Social Democracy of the Kingdom of Poland, also known as the SDKP. She passionately opposed the Germanization of Poles and also passionately opposed the Russification of Poles. Rosa also played a big role in the 1905 revolution. The 1905 revolution took place in Russia, partitioned Poland, and lasted until 1907. It was at the time the largest wave of strikes that Poland had ever seen. Throughout the period, many smaller demonstrations and armed struggles between the peasants and workers on one side and the government on the other side took place. The demands of the demonstrators included both the improvement of the workers' living conditions as well as political freedoms. And in 1905, Poland was at the verge of a new uprising or even a civil war. Against the advice of her Polish and German friends, Rosa left for Warsaw. If she were to be recognized, she would have been imprisoned. But Rosa was convinced that she was needed in Warsaw rather than Berlin. She actually used a friend's passport to gain entrance into Warsaw. She arrived on December 30th and met up with Drogiches, where they wrote for the SDKP's illegally published paper. In the year from 1905 to 1906, she made over 100 articles, brochures, appeals, and texts in both Polish and German. Rosa and Drogiches remained hidden for a while, but eventually an agent placed by the Tsar's authorities within the SDKP leadership found them out. The secret police force of the Russian Empire came to arrest them on March 4, 1906. They held Rosa prisoner at a local jail at first, then at Pawiak prison, and later at the 10th Pavilion of the Warsaw Citadel. Rosa continued to write for the SDKP in secret behind her prison walls, and her works were smuggled out illegally by friends. 2 officers were bribed by Rosa's relatives, and then a temporary release on bail was secured for her. This was due to supposed health reasons until the court trial in August. She then managed to secretly flee to Germany in the middle of September. Life in Germany. Luxemburg wanted to remain in Germany to be at the center of the party struggle, but she had no way of obtaining permission to remain there indefinitely. To solve the problem, in 1897, she married the son of an old friend to gain a German citizenship. They never actually lived together, and they formally divorced 5 years after their marriage. When Rosa moved to Germany in 1898, she settled in Berlin. She was active there in the left wing of the Social Democratic Party of Germany, also known as the SPD. Rosa was a very good public speaker, and her rhetorical skills made her one of the leading spokespersons. From 1900, Rosa published many analyses of contemporary European socio-economic problems in newspapers. Because of this, she had an idea that war was coming, and she strongly attacked German militarism and imperialism. Her resolution demanded that all European workers' parties should unite in an attempt to stop the war from happening. Between 1904 and 1906, Luxemburg was imprisoned 3 times for political activities. She taught Marxism and economics at the SPD's Berlin Training Center, and in 1912, she was the SPD representative at the European Socialist Congress. She and a French socialist member argued that European workers' parties should organize a general strike when war broke out. However, when the war started in 1914, the majority of the SPD supported the war, and so did the French socialists. When the Parliament of Germany unanimously agreed to finance the war, the SPD voted in favor and agreed to a truce with the imperial government. The SPD promised to refrain from any strikes during the war. These events actually led Rosa to contemplate suicide because all of her ideas had not worked out. In response to these events, Rosa organized anti-war demonstrations in Frankfurt. She called for conscientious objection, which is the right of an individual to refuse to perform military service on the grounds of freedom of thought, conscience, or religion. Because of this, she was imprisoned for a year for, quote, inciting to disobedience against the authorities. Law and order, end quote. In August of 1914, Luxemburg, along with Karl Liebknecht, Clara Zetkin, and Franz Mehring, founded the International Group, which became the Spartacus League in January 1916. The group wrote illegal anti-war pamphlets, synonymously signed Spartacus after the slave-liberating gladiator who opposed the Romans. Rosa's pseudonym was Junius, after Lucius Junius Brutus, founder of the Roman Republic. The Spartacus League passionately rejected the SPD's support of the funding of the war and actively sought to lead Germany's workers toward an anti-war general strike. As a result, Luxemburg was imprisoned in June of 1916 for 2.5 years. While she was in prison, friends smuggled out and published her articles. Rosa was freed from prison on November 8, 1918, which was 3 days before the Armistice Day of November 11, 1918. Luxemburg, with the help of a former partner, Karl Liebknecht, reorganized the Spartacus League. The League demanded amnesty for all people in prison for their political activity and the abolishment of capital punishment. This all took place during the German Revolution of 1918 to 1919. In December of 1918, they took part in a joint congress of the League that led to the foundation of the Communist Party of Germany, known as the KDP. Then, in January of 1919, a second revolutionary wave swept over Berlin, and Rosa was in favor of it. It was believed by many that Rosa Luxemburg was going to help put the world back in order, but she wasn't given the chance to do it. In January of 1919, she and fellow Spartacus leader Karl Liebknecht were brutally murdered. Germany had surrendered, 40,000 German sailors had mutinied, and the Kaiser had fled, leaving the Social Democratic Party to take control in what they branded a revolution. But this was not enough for the Spartacus League. They believed that Germany needed to follow Russia in a full-scale transformation. And on January 4th, 1919, the government dismissed the communist sympathizing chief of police, which sparked a widespread general strike. This became even more violent when the government instructed an elite paramilitary unit to suppress the communists, which prompted the Spartacists to urge armed revolt. And on the 15th of January, the elite paramilitary group captured Luxemburg and Liebknecht in Berlin, and they were dead within hours. It is unknown if the revolution the two Spartacus leaders dreamed of would have actually happened. They were divided on how to bring it about, and it is unclear if they had enough support. However, their murders did inspire a new wave of violence and protests across Germany. Overall, Rosa Luxemburg was a strong figure who led to political change in Germany. She professed a commitment to democracy and the necessity of revolution. She was, and still is, looked up to by many revolutionists. And here are my citations. Thank you for listening.